Hey there YouTube, it's Chris Mack and I'm back again with another video. Today's video is also the very first episode of Murse Monday. Today's content is going to be about how you can handle your friends and family members whenever they're asking you for medical advice. Hope you enjoy. Alright, before we get into those three specific ways though, I do want to discuss two things. The first being a kind of a ground rule that you should kind of live by when it comes to giving friends and family medical advice. And then the second thing is just an overall philosophy. So the philosophy that I have whenever it comes to giving friends and family medical advice is, think of it like selling friends and family a used car. If you can help it, don't do it. Because if anything happens to that car now or 10 years from now, it's going to be your fault. Same thing goes with medical advice. If it's not an urgent need, I would try and refer them to their PCP as much as possible. Because what could be a benign mole in one person could actually end up being cancer in another one. So you don't want to get caught up in that, oh, well, I thought it was this, and come to find out it was much worse. And that's not saying anything about your medical abilities and knowledge. That's just saying things happen. Nobody's 100% perfect. And if you're going to make a mistake, and everyone does, if you're going to make a mistake, you don't want to make that mistake with your friends and family. The second thing is kind of a ground rule. If it is that traumatic or that urgent thing, then by all means, give the advice, get them cared for, and do what needs to be done. An example of this is my mother is kind of crazy, but whose mother isn't, right? Anyway, so let me give you the ground scenario here. My parents are still living in Pennsylvania. I was going to school in Maryland and at the time living in Virginia. My father has already had 2 MIs at this particular point in his life. And my mother calls me up one afternoon to say, "Hi, your dad's having some really bad chest pain and it looks like he's having problems breathing. What do you think we should do?" You hang up the phone, you call 911, and when and if 911 hangs up the phone with you while you're waiting for EMS to show up, you call me back. If they don't hang up until EMS shows up, while the medic is looking at Dad, you hand the phone to the EMT who's standing there holding the stretcher waiting to see what's going to happen next. Can you tell as an EMT and the guy that was standing there waiting to see what happens next? So that way you can kind of get some ground info and everything. So if it is that urgent traumatic thing, get them cared for. All right. Let's get into those three things now. Okay, the first thing that you can do is actually reference your loved ones to some relevant, medically accurate, scholarly content. And what I mean by that is if they're on some blog getting somebody's opinion or someone's specific personal experience, which might not be their specific experience, then that's probably not a good thing. What you want to be doing then is actually getting them some good information. And we've all got textbooks. And textbooks. And textbooks. And textbooks. Give them one that's kind of on the older end. My parents have got lots of medical history. My mom's a diabetic, has COPD. My dad has chronic migraines. He's had an MI. He's had a stroke. He has restless leg syndrome. Big Pharma loves my family. So every couple of years, I wouldn't say every year, but probably about every 3 to 5 years, I get the next medical drug guide. And the one that's still relevant, I mean, not too terrible much has changed, but just more and more drugs are being added. I mail that one to my parents. So that way, whenever they have a drug question, if I'm busy, I'm at work, and my mom just wants to know what the heck is going on, hey, I gave you that book. Go ahead and look it up. That medication's probably in there. So reference them to good scholarly information. And with that, that also comes if they're looking at the internet. Don't let them to go to Joe Schmo's Blogs R Us. Actually reference them to good places. I know not everyone has access to all the things that we do, but if nothing else, go to work, get on your Lippincott or whatever, print off whatever is there, and mail it to them or email it to them. My parents don't have the internet, so I'm physically mailing. So you can do that route, or you can reference them to good websites like the American Heart Association and other platforms that are actually knowledgeable and educated on the content that they're looking for. So that's our first. The second way to handle friends and family whenever they're asking medical advice is to be so annoying and so, I don't want to say inappropriate, but kind of inappropriate and inaccurate that they finally stop bugging you unless it is serious. So a few examples of that would be like this. "Son, I just finished a huge meal and I'm feeling a little bloated. Do you think it could be stomach cancer?" "You know, Dad, I don't quite think it's cancer, but I have heard of similar symptoms before. I think I know what could fix this." "How about an enema?" "Hey bro, I was working on the bike yesterday and I scraped my knuckle a little bit. Do you think it's infected? You know what? That could be infected. I have an idea that'll fix it. Let's cut your finger off. And the third and final way to deal with your friends and family whenever they ask you for medical advice is to just go ahead and answer them. If it makes sense and if it's in your scope of practice. Those are really important. So one of those things might be another example dealing with my mom and dad. So when my mom was first diagnosed with COPD, the doctor suggested that she get a home pulse ox monitor that goes on her finger. So she called the doctor's office and was already concerned because her oxygen level was 96. Now for somebody with new onset COPD, 96 is phenomenal. Actually, for most people, 96 is phenomenal. But my mom, not being medically inclined, didn't realize that it wasn't an actual exam and you needed 100% to pass. So sometimes if the question is in your scope of practice to answer, go ahead and answer. Because one, you're going to save your family time and worry, especially if it's something like that. Oh, my pulse ox is 96. Is that a problem? No, 96 is not a problem. You can calm them down. You can keep them from worrying. You can also keep their PCP from having to deal with a long conversation or something else whenever it's truly just something as simple as, no, that's okay. Guidelines say that this is where you should be at for COPD. You could probably even be a little bit lower. And that's something that's normal and expected. So if you can't answer the question, sometimes the best thing to do is go ahead and answer that question. All right, that's a wrap for the very first episode of Murse Monday. If you enjoyed this, go ahead, hit the like button and hit the subscribe. We'll see you on the next episode. This is Chris Mack. Thanks and have a wonderful day.